Good morning. It's great to be here. This is a fresh story. It's very, very current. So unemployment rates amongst ex-offenders are amongst the highest in any group of people in the UK. A criminal record is a huge barrier to obtaining a job, and the cost to the taxpayer of repeat reoffending is huge. Midlands Together is a newly incorporated community interest company that exists to create employment opportunities in construction for long-term socially disadvantaged individuals such as ex-offenders. By helping ex-offenders into sustainable employment, we expect to achieve a significant reduction in reoffending rates. We will achieve this social objective through a commercially sustainable business model of buying, renovating and selling empty homes, working with social enterprises to employ ex-offenders to assist with the renovations. Midlands Together represents the replication of a proven social delivery model currently operated in Bristol by our sister company, Bristol Together. Bristol Together was awarded UK Startup Social Enterprise of the Year in 2012 by Social Enterprise UK. Both Bristol Together and Midlands Together have been approved as community development finance institutions by the Department for Business Innovation and Skills. And the model aims to deliver impressive social impact and financial returns for its stakeholders by creating significant full-time jobs for disadvantaged individuals as part of a commercially sustainable business model. It's our expectation that we should provide employment for 20 to 30 new recruits each year over the 5-year life of the bond. Funded by a grant from the Cabinet Office Investment and Contract Readiness Fund, the corporate finance team of Triodos Bank have worked with Midlands Together to undertake the investment readiness work that precedes capital raising. At the heart of a successful capital raising exercise is a compelling proposition, and Triodos have not only helped us develop this, but also position it effectively before key social investors. You will see on the slide that we have also been intentional about stimulating the social investment marketplace, and I shall refer to this again later. As you will see, this slide succinctly describes the proposition to investors. So Midlands Together is a social business, and the business model is fundamentally easy to understand. With the capital raised, we buy property that we can add value to, and we choose to create opportunities for social enterprises to work with us on those projects. We acknowledge their strengths and the challenges that they face and seek to structure each deal in a way that suits them. We are in a position to assist with cash flowing their involvement and funding the training and supervision that they are best placed to provide. One of the big attractions of our model, I believe, is that it has significant size and scale and is big enough to make a difference. The potential of the continuity of activity over the 5-year life of the bond will enable our partners to plan and develop robust systems which will hopefully support their development as well as the development of the employees. Some of our partners already have social businesses involved in construction, and for others this is more of an aspiration, and we expect to be able to assist them as they build their business and their future workforce requirements. We're creating a product for sale, and we have to compete in a commercial marketplace. The nature of what we do and who we choose to work with is not lost on the organisations who operate in this same area. I've been particularly encouraged by the interest shown in the model by housing associations. I've already spoken to a number, and hopefully we'll be speaking to a number more in the future. So the Together Group has its own aspirations, and the rollout of the model into the Midlands is a step from a city to the region. It's a milestone along the way. For our business, there are key components, and you can see them listed on this slide. The Ministry of Justice recent consultation paper on transforming rehabilitation indicated that the West Midlands was one of the highest, has one of the highest levels of low and medium risk offenders in the country outside London. Whilst the actual rate of adult reoffending in the year to September 2012 was below predictions and below the national baseline, the level of recidivism in the area and the size of the offender cohort remains significant and making the localised social need compelling. The West Midlands, as we've heard already, hosts a number of well-established, high-quality social enterprises. And we're delighted to have been able to enter into agreements with the likes of the Jericho Foundation, P3 and the Vine Trust, who've expressed interest in the opportunity right from the outset of the expansion plans which emerged almost 12 months ago. Demand for property in the West Midlands rose to its highest level in over 3 years during April 2013, as the government's Help to Buy scheme began to make an impact on the UK's housing market. In April 2013, the RICS reported that new buyer inquiries rose to their highest level in over 3 years, and this evidence of demand has provided a degree of confidence in the market, and improving trends are now predicted over the lifetime of the bond. So the proposition referred to earlier was expressed in more detail in an investment memorandum that was published when the bond was launched on the 15th of July 2013. In Bristol, my colleagues have worked with over 40 offenders in the 2 years that they've been working, and only one has returned to prison, and that was due to a breach of probation, not a new offence. Statistically, that represents less than 3%, and therefore compares quite favourably with our first target set at less than 10%. This figure will represent a significant reduction based on the current overall level of reoffending, measured at 25.5%, and would represent an excellent result if we were able to deliver to the same standards when working with people released after serving short sentences, where the reoffending rates within 12 months are approaching 60%. I'm confident that we shall see great results in education and training, with employees gaining accredited qualifications, mainly due to the vocational training we shall be able to facilitate, providing a variety of real-life practical challenges and tasks with a pay packet at the end of the week, is likely to create more motivation than hours in a classroom or time in a workshop rebuilding the wall that got knocked down the day before. Alongside the benefits of creating employment and reducing the likelihood of someone resorting to crime for income is the benefit to local communities, reducing the number of victims and bringing empty properties back into habitable use. Not only will this remove eyesores from residential areas, but also hopefully make a contribution to the severe shortage of affordable housing we hear so much about in some parts of this region. Some things are easier to measure than others, but our motivation really comes from seeing people being in a better position to make better choices for themselves. The prospect of social and economic independence for many is a long way off at the moment, but over time, hopefully we can play our part as a significant step towards that destination. So, how was the investment structured? Midlands Together has issued a 5-year, £3 million bond that will offer investors a fixed return of between 4% and 6%, secured on the company's property portfolio. The availability of community interest tax relief, or CITR as some of you may know it, can increase that return for a corporate investor to 12.5%, and for high-rate personal taxpayers paying 45%, it comes at the equivalent of 15.1%. So the bond has been structured to attract new investors, offering almost equity-like returns for those who are willing to subscribe for Series B and take on that little bit more risk. We've heard already that the bond is repaid and the bond costs us money. So how much did it cost us? It's £130,000 a year. And when do we pay it back? In 5 years' time, October 2018. So this really is fresh. Well, how are the results? The bond was launched on the 15th of July. Don't forget that's the beginning of the holiday period, and has proven very popular, with 20% of that issue filled within 3 weeks of the launch. Earlier this week, we did our first close of the bond with 2.5 million raised against a minimum subscription of 2.2, and we're on track to raise the full 3 million by the end of this month. Over 40% of the capital raised has come from individual investors, and the CITR uplift on the Series B part of £500,000 was very helpful in getting this raised. Our investors are enthusiastic about the potential of Midlands Together to make a real difference in the lives of the ex-offenders we work with, as well as the opportunity to make a reasonable return on their investment. So, like everybody else, I'm grateful to our hosts and our sponsors for the opportunity to bring you this exciting news at what is the end of a very significant week. As you can imagine, the hard work really starts now as we enter the delivery phase. But I'm personally very excited about the opportunity and can't wait to get started. Thank you for listening. I think some time has been set aside for questions. And if you have one, fire away. So the questions are around the offenders and how long they must have served, or whether there are any conditions around that.
Absolutely, yes.
The
around the time served, whether it's a short time or a long time or a mixture of.
The point was made earlier on that operating as a social business, there's a degree of flexibility of the things that you can do. So we're not hidebound to structured contracts and those kind of things. So someone who hasn't got a job, and the main reason they haven't got a job is because they've got a blot on the copybook somewhere, is a viable proposition for us. And the social enterprise partners that we work with, that's their mainstream business. So they're looking to work with people who've got probably a series of joined-up problems that require joined-up solutions. So the straight answer to your question is no, but what we want to do is we want to work with the people who have the potential to move the greatest distance. That doesn't mean cherry-picking. It means if we can intervene and get someone to make better choices in future, that's really where we're going to get the best leverage on the money people have been willing to entrust us with.
Thank you.
Okay.
I work at H&P Huel in Redditch, and I work with prisoners that go out of the prison that are in open conditions. Have you worked with prisoners that are in prison and go out on licence?
The job starts here, to be brutally honest with you. Monday morning, that's where the rubber hits the road. I know that the social enterprise partners that we're working with are already having those conversations, and this is the kind of industry where you can start the training inside. All the plans to match someone on release from a place like Huel, which may become a resettlement prison, and set the infrastructure up that involves coaching and mentoring, as well as the real prospect of a job, paid employment for 9 to 12 months to get someone up and running. Yes, we want to join the dots. Midlands Together is the bit that brings it together. We're here to steward the resources as an intermediary to deal with the frontline organisations that really do the hard yards. My responsibility is to get that business model working so that we do profitable transactions, so we cover our costs and cover our overhead, and we give the money back in 5 years' time, and hopefully encourage other people to invest in other expressions of the model. That's okay.
Take a couple more questions because I'm conscious of time, and I know you probably all wanted coffee and brownies and all sorts of things by now. So
there's a gentleman hidden by the TV screen, Sally. Okay. Next time, I think.
So Michael Lilly, CEO of My Time. It's about the social impact bond side of that, because we're developing a social impact bond for children, particularly around child deaths, which is obviously very relevant. I was actually on the BBC this morning talking about that issue. But what we've actually found, that the difficulty has been to not actually get the social investment and support. That's actually hasn't been a problem. it's actually been getting the commissioners to actually understand exactly what they're actually paying or buying. What have you learnt lessons from the development of your social impact bond?
We didn't go through that door, to be brutally honest. We're a social investment bond. We're not a social impact bond. We developed a proposition that says you can buy, refurbish and sell properties, and you can choose who to employ in that model. And we've got the evidence that shows if you pay someone, the likelihood of them reoffending reduces. We don't get rewarded for those outcomes. That's an opportunity for our social enterprise partners to look at working with us on a PBR contract to train people and know that there's a commercial enterprise out there, social business, that's interested in employing people whose history has stopped them really entering their future. So it's a different model. It's not payment by results. The way that we work with our social enterprise partners, basically we cash flow them and they repay us by results. So it's turning that model a little bit on its head and taking more of a risk.
So in a sense, you would advocate more of a kind of hybrid of a social investment bond that actually has the element of payment by results within it, because the current model of social impact bonds, like the Peterborough, I think actually does put a lot of risk on the actual provider.
Yes, I think it does, and cash flowing the activity is where you get somebody else involved in the model, which can complicate the issue. If you could put a value on the outcome, and you've got a social enterprise that knows it can deliver the outcome, if you could go and cash that in and get rewarded on it without all of the conditionality, I think there's an answer in there somewhere. But we're moving in the right direction with social finance. There's plenty of people in the room who've full of ideas and passion to see it developed and become more effective. So I know the work that My Time does is fantastic, and I'm sure with your voice in the room that there can be change.
Thank you.
I really just have to take one more question. So I
Sally,
think we've got
gentleman
one
under the
over
TV
here.
screen.
And then
yes.
I'm
Hello,
sure there will
Mark.
be lots of other questions, but if you all want tea or coffee, I'm sure Richard's going to be here. You're not running off, are you?
No.
So you can go and grab him over a coffee.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Richard, thank you very much for your presentation. Fantastic. Richard, I work for a company called Image Match, and we help unemployed back into work. I actually have a caseload of over 300 ex-offenders across Shropshire and Staffordshire. So I'm actually interested to know how far afield do you work and whether we could actually work together. And also, are you actually looking to expand the reach of your programme?
Our starting place, and if you can imagine the way we had to put a proposition together, and our starting place is to work with social enterprise partners who've expressed an interest in becoming involved in the model which has been piloted in Bristol. So we have four partners. The relationship that we have, our characteristics of being a CDFI and the CITR funding, tax relief that we get, means that we will work with a minimum of 5 partners, because a bit like a bank, we can't have all our eggs in one basket. So there's a degree of flexibility about where we could go. It's amazing. £3 million seems like a lot of money, but very quickly, when you start deploying it across 5 partners, you've got a float of £600,000 for each geographic patch. Currently, we're looking at Wolverhampton, Walsall, Birmingham and Worcester. There is a 4th, and there's a gap at the moment. I recognise the face now because I've been to Shrewsbury and we've spoken before, haven't we? But there are opportunities and there's some exciting things happening in and around Telford. And certainly, these things are not forever. We've got 5 years to make a plan. And if we can pilot something and we can demonstrate how a model can work, it doesn't have to be social finance to make this work. You're talking about a real business that just happens to be financed with social investment in this expression of it. If we can demonstrate to people that ex-offenders are work ready, can work, can come up with a decent product and a decent standard, well, it should be commercially viable and therefore fundable.